What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our power circuit up here and our control circuit down here and figure out how the motor starter is incorporated into both of these, okay? So the thing that you want to recognize is that the motor starter is wired into the power circuit on the top, and it's wired in the control circuit on the bottom, okay? And as a matter of fact, if you wanted to kind of draw a box around it, it would be all of these items right here are kind of all included in the motor starter, okay? So if we take a look at a NEMA starter, and I'm gonna come with this one right here, okay? This is kind of one in class, and here's the way that you activate it, right? You can click it, you look here where it's off, and then it will click on and off. I'm doing it manually, but obviously we're using electricity to turn this on to create a magnetic field. So the first part that you want to take a look at is this item right here, 1M. Well, that is an output on your control circuit. So this is a load, and it would have resistance, and that is what generates a magnetic field and closes all the contacts. So where's that on this right here? Well, the top button right here, say, it says 120, 50, 60 hertz up here in red. So these two items right here, well, those are our load, okay? And those are the coil right here of the motor starter. So that's identified. If you run voltage to these items right here, this thing's gonna click. And it makes a pretty good noise when it comes on. Big click. Now, in the control circuit, you have the overloads here, the normally closed overloads, because we want those to open, and we want those to bring the control circuit down for our protection, but we want to find those on here. So we need to find a normally closed switch. So the first thing you want to recognize is that this reset over here is for the overloads. Okay, and then we found the coil here, which is going to be for a contactor. So the items on this side over here, this is my overload. The items over here on this side, right here, this is a contactor. And the two have just been married together. So the overloads are part of the overload, the normally closed overload. So when I come right here and I see a switch right here for normally closed, knowing two terminals right here, you think, oh, there's a normally closed. Except that that is on this device over here, and this device over here is a contactor. So the overloads are on the device over here on this side of it, because that's where the overload is. So let's look here. Right here, I've got a thing that says NO. Well, NO means normally open. I come over here and I see an item that says NC, and I have two contacts. So these right here are my normally closed contacts. And notice this one's got a wire running, red wire right here, running up to the coil. Why does this have a red wire running up to the coil to the normally closed? Well, that is this wire right here. It's pre-wired, so we don't have to do that. And then the overloads then, the normally closed contacts for the overload are going to be right here. And that's where those are, okay? Now, the heating element here. Where's this heating element? Now remember, these don't open. They're always true. They just get hot. They're a sensor. Well, that's what's located over here on the overload, okay? And that's what goes up here on top of the overload. So that's where those are going to be located. And we don't actually need to make any connections on these. So even though I'm going to check these off because we've identified them, we don't actually wire those because they're already wired in here when they join these two items together. There's no wiring required necessarily to these overloads, okay? How about the contact down here, the auxiliary contact in the control circuit? Well, the auxiliary contact, this is part of the contactor, okay? So if I come back here, I'm not looking at that over here, I'm looking kind of at this item over here on the right. So way over here, well, I see I have some open contacts here, and I have some open contacts here. So I've got multiple auxiliary contacts, open and closed. but that's where those are. They're part of the contactor. So we got that. Finally, we need the main contacts, so that when this thing right here, when this thing clicks to on, where are the main contacts? Well, the main contacts, they're going to be labeled like this: L1, L2, L3. That's what that says there, L1, L2, L3, which is right here. L1, L2, L3. Those are my main contacts. And they go through a magnetic circuit breaker here, but those locations I just showed you are actually right here. They're labeled L1, L2, and L3 on the side of this contactor. And on the other side that goes to the motor, right here, you have T1, T2, T3. Those are the that goes to the motor. So this would be T1, T2, T3. So those are the power circuit connections that you would make for the motor: L1, L2, L3, T1, T2, and T3 to the motor.